Episode 152 of Australia's #1 marketing show. In this episode, I have an inspiring fireside chat with an entrepreneur who has strong opinions about business courage, the power of partnerships, and why office location is critical to business success.
Welcome to the Small Business Big Marketing Show, where successful small business owners share their secrets to take your marketing to the next level. Now here's your host, Tim Reid.
G'day everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Australia's #1 marketing show. I am your host, Timbo Reid, but you, so much more importantly, are a motivated small business owner ready to crank out some great marketing in order to build your business, in order to drive more inquiry your way. That's what we do here. That's how we roll. And we are brought to you by the very good folk at Net Registry, who basically are there to get your online marketing sorted. Domain name registration, website hosting, website design and development, pay-per-click advertising, search engine optimization, a bit of SEO. That's what they do, and they're very, very good at it. So head over to netregistry.com.au or head over to smallbusinessbigmarketing.com and click on the Net Registry banner, and you can see exactly what they have to offer you, the small business big marketing listener, because they're there to help and they are very good guys. Hey, and we're also brought to you by the very good folks at Flying Solo, or at least they listen in. They love listening in, those solopreneurs. Hey, listen, big show today. Want to just touch on the fact that I had a meetup yesterday for Melbourne listeners of the show. That was fantastic. Talk about that. And then I need to get stuck straight into the interview because it's a longish interview, but I'm putting it right up there as one of the great interviews of recent times on small business, big marketing. It's with a fellow, Jamien Zimmerman, who has a brand called Travelsim. And this was a hard interview to summarise because we covered so much gold, so much ground. But it's about entrepreneurship. It's about courage. It's just a wonderful, beautiful insight into a guy who's built a wonderful brand. More on that in a minute. So here's the thing. Yesterday, had my very first meetup and put it out on meetup.com. You would have heard me talk about it in earlier shows, in recent shows. The fact that if you went to meetup.com/small business big marketing, you could register to come along for a bit of a chinwag. And we did it. It was in Melbourne. It was a 1 o'clock lunch just outside of the CBD. Had 38 listeners RSVP, had 26 turn up, which I thought was a great outcome. I honestly didn't know. In ringing the restaurant to confirm numbers the day before, I'm trying to explain to them, look, you won't quite understand, but I've got this show and I've put it out on Meetup and I don't know anyone who's coming and I don't even know if they'll turn up, but I've had 38 RSVP anyway. They didn't understand what I was talking about. Ended up booking a table for 20, well and truly filled that. And look, it was just great to hang out with fellow listeners. You know, as a podcaster, I wouldn't say it's lonely by any stretch. I get lots of emails and feedback via various channels, but it's just so nice to meet you, the listener, face to face. So thank you to all 26 of you who turned up. Hey, it started at 1 o'clock and I left about 7 o'clock. And there were still some people there. You got to love that. That's your 6-hour lunch right there. Didn't think it was 1983 anymore. Didn't think the day of the long lunch had disappeared. Clearly not. It was so good. Everyone hung out for a while, had a good chat. Just great to hang out with other motivated small business owners. So going to do that again. Took me a while to get that one up, and thanks to my mate Mick the mechanic for helping me to get that going, because there was a bit of pressure, and also to Mark Penny, who was also there and kind of put the pressure on me to get that meetup going. And hopefully I'll do it in other states in the coming months. Just been booked for a roadshow next year already that's going to see me go around Australia. So maybe I'll get in early and book some meetups. Hey, so thank you to everyone who came. Okay, let's get stuck into this interview because it does go for, I can't remember, maybe it's about 50 minutes, but well worth it, guys. So here's the thing. Jamien Zimmerman started a business called Travelsim about 7 years ago. It's what the SIM card that you put in your phone when you go overseas, and you no more bill shock. That's basically the problem it solves. And I met Jamien at a recent roadshow that I was emceeing for Australia Post, and I had to interview Jamien in each state. And I just loved, his business model, his brand, the way he went about it. And every time I interviewed him, he was so strong and on message. You know, he was very clear about getting the Travelsim message across. And I said, mate, I've got to get you on the show. So that's exactly what I've done. Now, this is an interview, as I said earlier, it's kind of a hard one to summarise, but we start talking about entrepreneurship and the courage it takes and the decisions you've got to make along the way. And, you know, sometimes you're staring down the barrel, other times it's all happy days and everything in between. He talks about how he managed that throughout the time. We talk about the leverage of partnerships. Jamien has developed some incredibly strong partnerships with really big brands. We talk about customer service. We also talk about the importance of getting an office in a place that's going to help grow your business. And he has a very, very interesting view on where your office should be. So we cover a heap of ground. Travelsim is the brand. Jamien Zimmerman, founder and owner of it, is who is in the studio with me. Here's Jamien. Jamien Zimmerman, CEO of Travelsim. Welcome to Small Business Big Marketing.
Thanks very much, Tim. Thanks for having me on.
Mate, it's a pleasure. Looking forward to this story. It's a good one, I know, and I know our listeners are going to benefit from it. Hey, before we get stuck into the serious stuff, if you weren't running Travelsim, what would you be doing, Jamien?
Oh, that's a great question. It dawned on me about a year or two ago. The wife was giving me a bit of stick, and she said, "You're addicted to work." And I said, "I just thought it was a joke." And I realised it dawned on me. It hit me like a ton of bricks. So I actually am addicted to work. So I know that I'll always work. But, you know, I like that old saying, if you find something that you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life. So I try and justify it with that. Look, I think my forte, now that I understand myself a bit better after these last 7 or so years with Travelsim, is concept development in the trenches, getting new ideas off the ground. I absolutely love it. I'm a bit of an ideas person. I've always got more ideas. I was always an entrepreneur, although I didn't always like that tag. You know, in grade 1, I flogged a couple of pumpkins off a wild vine. It was growing in a churchyard. I'm probably going to go straight to hell for that. And took it to school and sold it to my grade 1 teacher for $1. And she said, thank you. I think grade 5, mum gave me a book at Christmas on, you know, little projects for young boys sort of thing. And one of them was how to make your own boomerang out of plywood. I made this boomerang. It did come back the first throw, which astounded me. But of course, there was an instant business for me in my small country town. And about a month later, I'd made enough to sell to all my mates in this little country town. So I think I'm stuck with the bug, and this concept development and these ideas, I really live for. I love the idea. So I guess I'd be doing that, Tim.
So a couple of things there. I'd like to know what you don't like about the label of entrepreneur. Maybe tell me that first.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I think it's similar. You know, maybe I'd read stories or some entrepreneurs that the way the media portrays them are a bit out there, and I was going to use the term of Richard Branson, but I think he's borderline one of my heroes. But and I think in the early days but I understand why he does it now. He gets out there because he uses his name and his his brand and all the rest of it to help get the focus. And I can see why he does what he does, you know, hanging from helicopters and all the rest of it. I think it was along the lines of the salesman thing. I did in the early days. I thought if you were in sales, you were just like a used car salesman, and you were selling junk to people that didn't need it.
Right.
And I think that tagline I was a bit confused about, but now it sits better with me. I sort of understand. It's
a term, entrepreneur. Even 5 years ago, certainly 10 years ago, there was a sort of a bit of a weirdness around it, but now it's almost, you know, the new black.
Yeah, and the other thing I guess I should say is most entrepreneurs that we come across in the media have in my opinion, and they might not say this, but they've really made it. Like they're worth hundreds of millions and you know, billions of dollars, and they're doing starting airlines and stuff. So when I think of where I'm at in my stage of my business, I think to myself, I've got a while to go yet. So I don't want to mistake people and say, okay, all of a sudden I should compare myself on the same playing field as a Richard Branson. That's clearly not the case.
Yeah,
but
right.
I think that's part of it too. But look, I've been lucky enough to deal with a few academics over the years and in recent years. And I think the entrepreneurial tag fits fine. And
so, Jamien, the idea then, therefore, that you like bringing ideas to life, does that mean that idea could be in any industry, in any category? It doesn't, the fact that you've got this product called Travelsim, on the assumption that one day you'll move on and start something else, it could be selling baby clothes, or it could be selling something else, like as long as there is a new idea there, the category is less relevant?
100%. That is it. I'm extremely passionate about Travelsim. I built it from the ground up, and it was a long, hard road. But at the end of the day, it's a vehicle. It's a vehicle to a personal sort of goal. And and what's more, I love the challenge of new industries. And absolutely 100% correct. It does not matter. In fact, I'm even looking at a new venture now, and one of the little goals might be to build apps for in 5 or 6 different industries, just for a challenge. Let's go out and it's the idea of getting to understand a new market and to change it and to come up with products and services that improve or better that industry, and that's what I love.
Are you a classic example of, like, you honestly have found something you love and you don't really feel as though you work?
Yes, in certain times. Look, Travelsim has been going for 7 years now, and I must say that I think the 7-year itch is maybe kicking in. And let's put that in perspective. You asked me what I would be doing, or perhaps what I'd love to do, and this concept development is something that I love. However, the day-to-day running of a bigger business, the human resources, the industrial relations, the basic sort of run-of-the-mill stuff doesn't get me out of bed in the mornings. And
the compliance.
The compliance, yeah. And obviously we hire people these days to help us with that. But as CEO, you've still got to be across all of this stuff. And look, I was brought up to work hard. I do it. I get in there and I come to work and I get stuck in it and get it done. But all I'm saying is it doesn't necessarily excite me as much as the concept development, the marketing development side of things.
Are you too focused on the detail? Does that get in the way, and where you should be kind of more macro?
Yes, I think that's a very common a common thing to say about many business owners, is that in what we say at our level is we're stuck in the operations. My general manager and I look at each other every day and say we've been sucked into the vortex again, vortex of operations, and but it's an easy tag to throw away, throw down, isn't it? At the end of the day, we're invested in this business. And I've been accused before of, this is your baby, Jamien, don't call it ugly. You could never leave this. You could never walk away. I think that view is not correct. The problem is, I've been here since day one. I know more about it than anybody else. Of course, that's not an arrogant thing to say. It's simply because I made it. I've been here since day one. What's even worse is that every day that goes on, I've been here longer than anybody else.
Yeah.
No one can catch up, can they? So, and what's happened is a lot of the decision making that I do now is very instinctual, and I look across the table at my managers sometimes and think to myself, why don't you know this? Why is it taking you so long? And it's because, I've got to give them credit for where they're at.
I look at so many founders of small businesses that have become successful, and I think that must be one of the hardest things, is to, give birth to a business idea, to bring it to life, to make it successful, and at some point, slowly, it's like raising a child. At some point, you've got to slowly hand it over to others. And that just must be really, really difficult and frustrating at times. It
is, because it doesn't happen as quick. And when you make that decision in your mind that it's time, let's look at a slightly bigger point here. I have a view that no single business anywhere in the world that's ever been made will survive forever unless they adapt. I can give you heaps of examples, but the simple one is I think Wattle Paints, has been in Australia for 100 years or so. When they started out, they were probably selling lead-based paint. I dare say there's not much lead-based paint on their shelves at the moment.
Probably none.
The point is, you must be able to adapt, and you must, and sometimes that adaptation can take you outside of the industry you're in. I think we're not scared of that at Travelsim, where we think to ourselves, our future is this being able to adapt. Now, where that ties back into, am I stuck in the detail? Am I stuck in the operations? Is that you have to get out of the operations, because you have to look strategically at the business and think, okay, well, I don't really want to plan our demise, but if we don't adapt in this amount of time and come up with other revenue streams or other products or other markets, then we won't be around. And so we're not scared of that. We face it head on, and actually, quite frankly, I'm excited by it. So to me, it's not only that it's frustrating being stuck in the detail and feeling like sometimes you can't get out. It's the very fact that if you don't, well, the dream will be over one way or another, won't it?
Correct. Yeah. Does being stuck in the detail, I wonder, sometimes mean that you haven't found someone, and I've met some of your team and they appear to me to be just bloody solid blokes, but does sometimes it mean you haven't found someone that you fully trust to take control of what it is you've created?
Yeah, that's been levelled at. A lot of people sort of come, that's sort of a common thing that people, I hear people say to me or say to other business owners as well, or entrepreneur type owners. It may be true. I think it's a strong word to say you don't trust somebody. I think it all comes back to the knowledge thing, when it's almost instinctual. I can sort of I've got a real strong feel for the business. It's just not feasible to expect someone to walk in and get that. But look, the whole thing's right. And one of my accountants once said to me that, Jamien, consider these managers, these people that you're bringing on, as spinning plates. They're spinning you good china, and occasionally they're going to drop some. If that's the end of the world for you, that's someone that's going to drop your china, good china, then don't worry about it. Stay in the business, do the operations, and run your business that way. But if you really want to move away from that and move into other areas, then you'll have to trust people. They will drop the china. They will make mistakes. Like you made mistakes, and you just have to accept that. And I think I think I do a lot of reading in business books, and one of the things that sticks out to me of recent books I've been reading is the right people doing the right things. So you are right; it's vital that you find the right people in those positions and that they're doing the right things.
What book was that in?
I think that was the Rockefeller Habits, which one of the best business. Well, it's one of those books. Occasionally, I do a fair bit of reading, but of these business books, these self-help books, because I've always think there's a snippet in each one of them that you can take away. I love it, and you've got to keep bettering yourself. But that book came along almost at perfect timing for me, so I highly recommend it. But I can see clearly that if your business is at that stage, that book is one of the better books I've ever.
Isn't it interesting when things do come along? Sometimes we don't acknowledge that. In fact, we don't even have the radar on to see it, but things do come along. I mean, that's a bit of a woo-woo discussion for another time maybe, but things do come along at certain times for reasons.
Well, and I'd say to your listeners, to your guys in the trenches out there doing the work, is just stay in the business, because this is what happens. It's amazing, and don't change your telephone numbers, whatever you do, because you just get your hand out a card at an expo or at a meeting, and 2 or 3 years later, someone rings you, go, "Oh, are you still doing those SIM card things? I need 1,000, or I've got this overseas." So the thing is, stay in the race. If you think you're onto a good thing and you've done your marketing well, and you think you're in the right place, and then stay in business. Persist, because things do land in your lap. And I was always told this. I didn't believe it. I'm always told that swings and roundabouts, and treat people well, because it always comes around. I think, well, when's karma coming around for me? It doesn't feel right, but it does. I'd say that to my fellow entrepreneurs listening, to stay in the game if you're onto the right thing, and because things will come around.
Mate, well, let's talk specific. That's a wonderful conversation we've just had about entrepreneurship, and one I haven't had on the show for a while. Tell us, Travelsim, what is it, and where did the idea come from? Okay, so Travelsim is the mobile phone service for international travellers. It's a smart SIM card that you put into your mobile phone when you go overseas. It's not designed to replace your existing mobile. It's just a SIM card you use when you travel overseas. It's designed to avoid or to not get those crazy roaming charges that we see. And our voice charges are 80, 90, 95% cheaper than the standard sort of roaming that's out there in the market. Wow.
So it's not. And look, I've been in telecommunications for a lot of years, and I remember when I worked for one of the big guys there years ago. We used to go out and tell small businesses, change to this company because you'll save all this money, and it amounted to 5 cents a month. It wasn't worth the time to fill out the paperwork, but it really is big savings in roaming. We're free to receive calls in 120 odd countries, where the other carriers are charging $1, $2, $2.50 a minute to receive calls. So it doesn't get much better than that. So the idea came along. I'd been in telecommunications sales, working for the big guys for a few years. I'd left one of those and written some software that analysed phone bills. So I guess at the time that this thing come across my desk, I had what you'd probably call an expert understanding of telecommunications billing, including international roaming, and I knew that nothing was being done about it, and it was very expensive. And this thing sort of landed on my lap. Someone exposed me to the opportunity. And then I went into research mode, and away we went. That's sort of how it came about. So I guess, in summary, I understood very, very clearly the telecommunications scene in Australia at the time, and I knew I didn't see any answers out there to roaming really. So I thought, well, there must be a business in this somewhere.
Classic problem identification. You had the solution. What you didn't have was cash. So how did you get this puppy to market in the early days?
Oh, look, this is one of the, I know I've told you, Tim, but this is one of those, I was going to say rags to riches, or the second one's still coming true. But look.
Oh, really? Really? Hey, you're telling me after 7 years the riches aren't showing themselves? I don't believe you.
I've got goals, Tim. I'm still driving. I'm still driving a Hilux, Tim.
You're good on you. Well, you got to just carry all those tools around, mate, because you're always on the tools. But I'm going to get you to wrap some numbers around it in a minute. But before we do that, so how did you get it to market in that first 6 months, 12 months?
Look, yes, it was more like 3 years. What had happened is I identified an opportunity. I got mixed up with a crowd that had a similar product that was probably a poor decision. But whilst I'd done that, I'd researched the world and realised there was one or two, maybe three suppliers in the world that could do this. I wrote a proposal to one of those and said, I'd like to be the person in this part of the world that sells or promotes this particular technology. I bought it. It turns up on my doorstep, 3 blank SIM cards and 3 bits of paper saying, that's Travelsim, go your hardest.
Wow.
And from there, I had to teach myself. I thought, well, I need a website. I hadn't actually learnt HTML.
So it was a pre-existing product. You bought the license to it?
Well, I bought the technology, if you like, or I still buy the phone calls, if you like. We call it airtime in industry. So what I had to do is I had to wrap that up into a product that for the Australian market from scratch with no cash. And what's more is that the time I spent on trying to get the Travelsim off the ground pulled me away from my existing consultancy business in this telecommunications analysis. So
making your money.
Yeah, and you make these mistakes. And in any case, but what I'd done, Tim, and one of the big things that I got right here was I really, really researched the market. I understood those days right down to the single digits, how many Australians were going overseas, where they were going, how old they were, how long they were going for. And I was able to really understand where I thought the market was, because I knew that I didn't have millions of dollars. I knew that I couldn't go and attract millions of dollars at that stage for a venture like this. So I'd have to do it on the bare bones, on the smell of an oily rag.
So you did a lot of quantitative stuff. I guess the qualitative stuff there too was that 7 years ago, the idea of using your phone when you went overseas was just like, that was laughable. I mean, even now, I think people still hold that perception that just not going to do it. It's going to be too expensive. I found myself both times travelling overseas this year where I've just, first thing I've done is raced out to get a SIM card at a local shop somewhere. But back then, people must have it just wouldn't have been something you'd consider.
Yes, but that's right. And I always said we had a new market altogether, a brand new market of people that weren't taking their mobile phone at all overseas. We knew a lot of people were travelling, and it was growing. So a lot of Australians were heading off overseas, and that was a growing market. So we knew that mobile phones, even at that stage, there was more active mobile phone services in Australia than living Australians. Mm-hmm. So we knew that they'd probably want to take their mobile phone overseas, and I just understood that very clearly. But I guess I really want to stress the point that I was once told in a sales position, the new boss walked in and threw the yellow pages down on the desk and said, "There's your territory, son. Go your hardest." He should have just said, you're the tease. Go after any business starting with a T, because it was almost too much. It was like, where do I start? And I spent weeks and weeks running around in circles and not getting anywhere, spinning the wheels. What I did with Travelsim was say, okay, we are going after this. We were going after this type of person because we think it'll work for us, and identified it from there. So
who was that person? So because you've got some numbers, you know who's travelling overseas, you know how many are taking their phone, how many aren't. You know why? Because they're scared of bill shock. Who was that? Was that person? Was it a business traveller? Was it families? Who were they?
Yeah, well, it wasn't a business traveller. 76% of all travel out of Australia is for leisure or holiday travel, and 19% for business, and the bit rest over, I think, is military and education and things like that. So I had a corporate sales background and understood very, very clearly that the sales cycle on business, especially in telecommunications, is very long. And what this means is that if you're lucky enough to get in front of the CIO or the CEO or the decision makers of the business, if you're lucky enough to get in front of that person, they'll want to go through a cost-benefit analysis. They'll want to consider their current contractual commitments. And what all this means is that it can take you 6, 9 months, 12 months before you start seeing some money come through the door from that sale. And you've got to carry that cost the whole time. It's these business and corporations. It's not a we'll take one of those right now necessarily. It's usually some sort of process that's got to be going through. So I knew this, and I thought, well, even though they spend a lot more money per SIM card, the 80-20 rule. In this particular case, I think there's a lot of punters going over there. There's 76%, and millions and millions. Maybe we should be going after those guys and getting a split of the market. So that was the first decision. So we were non-business focused at that stage of the game, simply because I assumed that it would be hard for me to get enough numbers through the door in the early days. Now, we did get a lot of businesses, it turned out. We have many large corporations using it, which is testament to the product. Now, the second thing I did, and this is going back 7 years, mind you, this is not now. The second thing I did was identify that the assumption was this was for backpackers. The problem with the backpacker market is they travel on a budget, so they probably don't. I made an assumption that they would probably just go into an internet cafe and use Skype because and not even worry about a mobile phone because that'll do the trick for them. They're on a real shoestring budget. So, but then I thought to myself, well, the 40-plus-year-olds who are going overseas, which there was a lot of them going overseas for longer, actually have probably more money at hand at that stage of their career, and also have a much bigger reason to have to call home. One being a young family, but also ties to business and friends and all the rest of it. So that's where we sort of positioned our products. Now, I think those decisions early on were held us in good stead. So
yeah, well, you have not fallen into the trap, Jamien, of trying to be everything to everyone, which is so seductive, so tempting as a business of any age, but particularly as a young business, as you're trying to establish some cash flow. You just think, God, we'll throw it all up against the wall and hope some of it sticks.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right. And you just can't do that. And there's some really cool stuff out there now, and on product development and concept development. The lean sort of startup stuff. And I think it's in a way it relates to that. Don't try and be everyone, and to a certain degree.
Mate, that's a great book. We've mentioned that a number of times, listeners. But The Lean Startup, which is written by the professor of entrepreneurship at Harvard, fantastic book.
Yeah, well, it's pretty smart, isn't it? I thought it was quite. When I read that, I thought to myself, "Geez, I wish I'd read that 7 years." But so I'm not sitting here saying that I did, and you would never hear me say I did everything perfect, and here we are. It's not that case at all.
You told me before I hit record that you haven't made a mistake, so don't try and trip me up, I think were your words.
Oh no, I'll tell you what. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's you make some mistakes. It's fantastic.
Well, tell me, mate. I want to hear about mistakes. We're 7 years on. Travelsim is a successful brand. That's why you're on the Small Business Big Marketing Show. Wrap some numbers around it.
250,000 Australians have taken a Travelsim overseas to date, and we're still growing. We have Australia Post as a retail as a customer, as a retail partner. As well as All Phones and Dick Smiths, the Jet Set Travel Group, which is your Harvey Worlds, the NRMA, RACQ,
Wow! So
it's quite incredible. It's
mate, that is partnership strategy. We've got to talk about that. That's fantastic. Okay, so 250,000 Australians, major partnerships with major brands. Number of staff?
65 on the books this year. With we have a cyclical business in our business, which means at certain times of year Australians travel more than other times, which means our customer support workload increases dramatically. So we use casual, part-time casual workforce. In fact, we positioned our business consciously near a university to pick up smart young people looking for 12 to 20 hours work a week during our busy times, and that's been a masterstroke, to be honest with you.
Masterstroke. A major decision around office location was being close to a university to get good staff.
Yeah, that's one of those ones where I can claim that I actually sat down one day and said, where are we going to put this thing when it gets big enough? Because it literally started. It didn't start in its own bedroom. It was too small for that. It started in the corner of the existing bedroom. It then got big enough to have its own bedroom in the 2-bedroom unit. Yeah. We went to a serviced office after that. And then we went to our first office space, and
near a uni.
Every single year of the business, we've expanded our office space. Tim, isn't that an amazing stat? But you've got to put it in perspective. We started in a room.
Yeah. Correct. Tell me, can you give us any numbers? Can you tell us an annual turnover?
Yeah, we're about 11 million. I don't mind saying this. $11 million turnover last year. I'm not going to give you the margins, Tim. Though I know you probably want that, but
No, you were saying before I hit record. I think you were saying there's about 70% margins. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I gave the low end. Look, the thing is, I always find funny, and this is another funny thing your listeners will find as their businesses go through levels of I guess success. It's funny how people quote turnover, isn't it? Because turnover is meaningless.
Yeah, correct.
I could have just said to you it was hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Turnover is not really an important number, but bigger business does.
What is the important number?
Well, it's margin, isn't it? I mean, would you want 1 million customers giving you 1 cent, or would you like just a couple of customers giving you $1 million? I mean, really, this is very important stuff, and it relates back to the decision on what market you choose. Don't try and be everything to everyone. You've got to try and choose and you're in business, and part of the reason you're in business is to make some money. I use an analogy. A lot of my competitors and a lot of the telco industry, not only in Australia but in a lot of the developed countries around the world, have got this race to the bottom on pricing. This crazy race to the bottom. And
can only finish in one place.
Well, look, it can, and what happens is margins get smaller, so they look at their cost and they go, "Oh, customer service is a cost. I better cut that." They cut their customer service. They lose some more customers, and you get on this downward spiral. I use the analogy that tomorrow I might enter the stapler business, Tim. I might go and put a new stapler on the shelves. Now I've got a choice. Do I go out and look at the market and say, "Oh, there we go. The average price for a stapler at all your office works is $5." What I can do is I might talk to the Chinese and find a cheaper way to manufacture and distribute this and get it down to $4.50, and I'll go and enter the market at $4.50 and have this price leadership, and away I'll go. I just think that's wrong. And why don't we think about it this? Why don't we enter the elite stapler market, of which there is none? Why don't we go and convince, I don't know, Kelly Slater comes to mind, and get him to sign our staplers, and we'll sell them.
Kelly Stapler.
Yeah, and we'll sell them for $250 each. Now, sounds absolutely ridiculous, but I betcha there's a small market out there of people who would love to have a Kelly stapler. Now, please, if Kelly Slater gets on this, I'm not using your trademark, Kelly.
It's all right, mate. I've already registered Kelly Slater Staplers, and I've registered kellystapler.com.
See, that's the point. It's not. I just think that, when you're a small entrepreneur and you're out there doing your best, and you look at these big businesses, your assumption, especially my assumption, is that they must be really smart. They must be really, really good and have these incredible marketing departments and this department and that department, and the firepower they've got against us. It's completely wrong, everybody. It's not like that at all. You've probably got more smarts sitting in your one-man business than a lot of these big businesses have on certain subject areas. And some of these fundamentals of business, the big guys either get wrong or they're doing it for other reasons. They're in a different level of business. They're in a whole different world, the way they play the game. So ignore what they're doing. Don't try and understand it, but be a bit smart. If you can sell 100 Kelly staplers, then you might be better off than trying to sell 10,000, blue ones in at Officeworks for $2 or something.
Listeners, I'm talking to Jamien Zimmerman, CEO of Travelsim. Jamien, tell me, was there a point along the way where you got the wobbles and thought, "Oh, geez, hang on, I don't know whether this is going to work out how I want it to"?
Next time you're on the Gold Coast, Tim, I'll shout you out for a beer, but come up and I'll take you to the spot on the beach where I turned to my wife and said, "This sucker's not going to fly, darling. I think I'll go back to labouring." And we had a saying that got us through, and the saying behind every good man's a good woman, whatever it is, that could not be possibly true. I doubt we'd be anywhere near where we are without my beautiful wife, Esma. And basically it was, get back in the game, mate. Get back in the game, you slacker. And I won't tell you the exact words she used, but
no, tell us. I want to know.
No, it's too many swear words.
Go. It doesn't matter. This is not.
We had a saying that said that I spent a couple of years on cattle stations at my aunties and uncles years ago, and I used to turn to my wife and say, "Well, we can always go and chase cows." In other words, it was a burn the boat strategy. Get out there. If you're going to do it, go in there, balls and all. I was going to say, please, that'd be great to see in the media tomorrow, Tim. But the thing is, persist. Get out there and keep going. And yes, there was a couple of really key occasions where I thought to myself, if we don't get a couple of sales tomorrow, I'm going to pull the pin. The stress is too much. The cash flow pressure in those early days.
It was the cash flow pressure, was it?
It's all about the cash flow pressure in those early days, and it was self-funded, and we'd put everything on it, everything we had, which wasn't a great deal, and we'd put it on the line, and and we had big deals that just went west on decisions out of our control, and it's heart-wrenching. Actually, I'll tell you a funny story. Very, very early on in the business, and at this stage, I think I had around about 1,000 customers, or it had 1,000 people use Travelsim. It was a couple of years into the business, and I was doing all of the customer service 24/7 on my personal mobile phone. So what would happen, it was in a 2-bedroom unit. That was the office setup. And what you're trying to do in those days is make yourself look bigger than what you are. So you're providing this expert customer service. So people will be ringing up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'd jump out of bed and say, Travelsim, Jamien speaking, how can I help you? I'd like to speak to your accounts team, please. 1 second, I'll put you through to the accounts team. Accounts team, how can I help you? I actually did that. That's actually something I did to make it sound bigger. There was one person the whole time running it. I got to about 5,000 customers on my own, Tim. No help.
Did you really?
I know, crazy stuff. Just 24/7, 14, 16, 18 hours a day, diving out of bed on a couple of hours sleep and being fresh as daisy, but loving it, to tell you the truth. I was in there having a crack. And so, things were tight, and and a couple of times there, it was really on the wire. It was, do we keep going or not? And I forgot the story I was going to tell you, but in any case,
that's a good story in itself.
Exactly right. And some big things just went west, and we thought we were across the line and nearly ready to celebrate, and it all just fell over and started again. And the story was, I got an order in the early days from Telstra, from 7 marketing executives at Telstra were going overseas, and I thought, these buggers are just getting started and just seeing the first runs on the board, and they're trying to knock me off already, and this big giant's going to crush me, and it's all over. It's all over. This big. I can't believe it. So I didn't fulfil the order. I got this phone call about a week later saying, where's our order? We really would like to get our SIM cards. We're leaving soon. I said, well, what's wrong with you guys? I'm a nothing little tiny player, little punter having a go. Why are you trying to get? And this lady said, it's nothing like that. We're going overseas, and roaming's turned off on our SIM cards, and we just like to use an Australian company. Use yours. So I thought, there we go. I've got the beautiful niche market there. Telstra marketing executives going overseas. So, it's funny how these things are gut-wrenching at the time, but
So Jamien, tell me, mate, there must have then been a point on the other side of the coin where you've looked at the lovely Esma and said, geez, darling, I think we're onto something.
Well, I think I go back to that point on the marketing research. Look, we knew there were people getting ripped off on roaming. We knew that they were in there, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, millions, in fact, really, who were taking their phones overseas, who were a bit unaware, didn't really understand when it says $5 a minute, it actually means for every minute on your phone, you're getting charged $5. You could have a $100 phone call. There wasn't much data around back then, so data's a bigger problem now. But, people were, and I can give you hundreds and hundreds of stories. And an old lady rang me once, and very old, she was going back over to Malta to visit her family she hadn't seen for many, many years. And she said, listen, I only spend $10 a month on my home phone. Your SIM card's $50. I'm not sure if I can justify it. And we talked I talked to this lady. I was doing customer service, and she agreed that it was a bit too much for her and that she'd try not to use a mobile phone. Anyway, she lands in Malta and they lost her luggage, and she spent an hour on the phone and got a phone bill for $365. And she rang up crying, and because she didn't really understand telco, when she got back, she'd called me crying, saying, can you please pay this bill for me? Can you help out? And I think, those sort of stories, you thought, okay, look, you know what? There's people out there getting rorted. They just don't understand that there's an alternative. We've got to keep fighting here. There's a market here. There's money to be made. We've got a good product. Just stick with it and keep trying. So,
one of the things, Jamie, that I'm just hearing from you in this story is that power, those first 5,000 phone calls, those first 5,000 clients that you provided customer service to, jumping out of your bed at 3 a.m. Is there anything more powerful than having that conversation with your customers?
Well, no, and we have a DNA to the way our business started, because I wasn't scared of doing that. I didn't think it was below me to get on the phone, and I still don't, to my customers. Well, that's held us in good stead, isn't it? It forms one of the 3 pillars of our mantra at Travelsim, is this customer service. It's just so important. It's hard enough getting one, and this is the other thing I don't understand about some of my bigger competitors out there, is that the way they treat their customers. I just don't really get it. Every business 101, marketing 101. It's harder to get them to all those things. Don't lose your customers. Treat them well. And I just think that it's held us in such great stead that every single person in this business right now can jump on the phone if called upon, from the admin person to the receptionist to the CEO to the GM marketing. Anyone can jump on the phone and take a support call and give it a fair crack, because
that's that Zappos, that shoe company in America, Zappos. They've got that whole model of, in fact, not only can anyone jump on and address a customer service issue, they've also got an amount of money that every single person in that business can spend without seeking approval, and it's quite a significant amount of money. And I'm talking, $100-$200, where you can go and send a customer some flowers, or you can arrange something to be fixed without actually having to get it approved. And I think it's in the book Selling Happiness. Great book.
Yeah, I've heard that story before, but I'm not sure if I've read that one. But look, and this goes back to your listeners out there as well. Do you really want to go and work for a business, in fact, your business, if they're cutting corners on customers, if they're not treating customers how you'd like to be treated? Well, my simple philosophy is this. I'm lucky enough to own the business. I built it from scratch. I don't want to come in here each day and see corners cut there. I want people to be treated how I'd like to be treated. And I'm getting old, Tim, getting old and snobby.
Yeah, well, mate, for listeners, this is an audio interview, but I can tell you now, Jamien looks more like Kojak than he does Gene Simmons. Lots of hair.
So look, at the end of the day, and that's our mantras. Customer service is actually really simple. You don't need to know anything. Like you can come and do customer service today, Tim, as long as you remember a couple of simple rules. Treat people how you'd like to be treated, and do your best every time. And if you simply do that stuff, and that's I try and repeat that to my team daily, because if you do that stuff and you've got no knowledge and no training, well, you'll say to the person, listen, I don't really know what I'm doing here, but say right there, I'm going to find someone who does know what they're talking. Correct. We'll get the answer for you. If you follow those simple rules in customer service and treat your customers well, at the very least, it makes it better to come to work, doesn't it? Simple as that.
Tell me, there must be competitors undercutting you, and they're always in any industry. We're always going to experience that pricing battle, which ends in tears. How do you avoid going down that path and just continuing to hammer home the fact that we'll never let you down? We have the best customer service. We've got the best product. Our quality's better than the rest of the marketplace. Because there's massive courage in there, because you think at some point, we're going to lose that battle, and the whole market's going to go with the cheapest.
Well, look, you've hit the nail on the head. I think the word's courage. A few years ago, a brand popped up and said, we can do 3-cent phone calls in China. And I think ours was $1 a minute, and they were saying 3 cents a minute. That's a fair difference in price.
Yeah, massive.
I didn't think it was possible, but their marketing and their advertising was very heavy. I got out of bed that morning after reading that PR release and come into work early and put all my prices up by 5%. And I did that because to remind myself that do not follow this path. Just kick your head down and keep doing what you're doing. And so it's the courage is the word. If you believe in what you're delivering is a good product, and you can't be stupid about it, you've got to go out and see what the market's doing. But look, the point is, if your product survives in the market, its only proposition is price, and you're there because you've got a cheaper phone call, then you won't last forever and you'll be knocked off. And to be realistic, Tim, every day I wake up and see that. At the end of the day, one of the reasons that Travelsim's had such amazing success, let's just be totally realistic, is simply because our call rates are so much cheaper than roaming. Now, we are seeing an absolute myriad of niche competitors into the market. In the last few days, we've seen some of the big carriers start to drop their roaming rates. So if we don't adapt, if we don't put in place a strategy, and if we stay our proposition is not just price, by the way, because we've been saying this for years and years. But in other words, we've got other things that make Travelsim a brilliant thing to take overseas. Even if it was the same cost as a bigger player, I'd still take Travelsim. We can get to that later. But the point is, you've got to be able to say, if you're just in price. My general manager says if the only proposition that you have in business is price, you're not actually in business. It's something else. You're not actually trying to go out. And if that proposition may be customer service, and I'm seeing all sorts of businesses out there these days who are realizing this. It's like somewhere along the line, business forgot that.
Yeah.
It's actually about the customer.
Yeah, funny that. You got 3 pillars of the business, Jamien. Customer service.
A few years ago, you talk about things that happen in the business and you wonder if they're door closing sort of events. And one of the things that used to keep me up at night, and I'd wake up and just couldn't sleep, was this whole price proposition, and knowing that sooner or later one of the big boys are going to drop their rates and get me out of the market. I was sort of thinking to myself, it doesn't matter how good a guy you are, Jamien, if it's only 10% cheaper to take Travelsim, then people will go, you know what, Jamien's a good guy, but it's just easier for me to stick with my existing SIM card. I'll take that overseas. So this has stressed me out because we hadn't sort of made any money at this stage of the game. We were putting every cent that we made back into the business, and I thought, I haven't made it yet. I can't bear the thought of having done 4 years of extremely hard work and not get a brass razoo out of it. I wasn't even paying myself for the first 3 years, wasn't making enough money. So I thought, what's the strategy? And this is the important thing about business, isn't it? And our strategy is international expansion, value-added services expansion, and the best customer service in the world. And we wake up and say that every day. So international expansion means we know what we've achieved in Australia is coveted or wanted by other markets around the world. Our systems are cookie cutter type systems. We can white label it and plonk the systems in any country of the world anytime we like. They're multilingual, multi-currency, all the rest of it. So we built those systems. Let's go and expand internationally, because the likelihood of those markets all collapsing on price at the same time is very, very remote. The second thing is the fun part, and this is where Jamien loves to play, is the value-added services. What else does Travelsim do? Is it just a cheaper phone call, or can it do more things for me when we travel? And we've released a whole lot of value-added services already, and some of those value-added services projects are now morphing into their own revenue opportunities. So that's the whole idea.
Like what?
Well, look...
Go on.
Do you want the scoop or not?
Mate, we love scoops on small business, big marketing.
We've written this incredible application, this mobile app that's about to launch in the next few weeks. You don't have to have Travelsim to use it, but it does make Travelsim a lot better even again. It corrects international dialing on the fly. We know from research that Australians in particular, compared to our European cousins, have a bit of trouble with dialing international numbers, getting codes right, using 0011, leaving zeros in when they shouldn't. I know the exact figures for Travelsim because obviously we have the data. Mm-hmm. Our application doesn't require any data access. It's offline, they call it, and is able to correct those numbers wherever you are in the world. You could be sitting in Germany, dial the local number without the area code, and it will correct it for you.
So what you're doing, you recognised that you're in the business of providing cheap phone calls when overseas and avoiding bill shock, but there is actually a whole lot of other things that happen when you're overseas around phone calls, around keeping in touch, around communication, that these value-add things are going to just give the brand a much greater depth and richness than it would if it was just a cheap phone call.
I just want to correct you there. You're using the term cheap phone call. We never say that. It's a cheaper phone call. It's a cheaper phone call in the competitions because
sorry, Mr. Zimmerman,
Mr. Travelsim. Cheap things. People then assume that it's cheap. When we're not cheap, we use the same networks as the other carriers use. We have the same types of agreements.
Mate, I love even the fact that you pulled me up there. When I first met you, you are very clear on your key messages. And listeners, you got to listen to this. When I met Jamien, I was emceeing and hosting this thing for Australia Post, this Australia Post TV kind of thing that was happening around Australia at these different exhibition buildings. And I had the opportunity to interview Jamien each time about Travelsim, and it was beamed up into the hall that we were in, the exhibition centres. And mate, you're always on key message. And I've done a lot of interviews, and it's amazing how many small business owners just aren't. They're not disciplined enough to correct people. You know, when you talk about my brand, this is how you talk about it. And when you get everyone singing from the same songbook, you actually build a strong brand.
Yeah, and you just have to. And I think I told you the story about one time I went down to Adelaide to train up a whole bunch of retail store managers. I won't mention the brand. And these guys were coming into a rolling 3-day sort of training conference, and groups of 30 each time. And I conducted this training to these guys on Travelsim and how to sell Travelsim back in your stores. And this was in South Australia. At the end of each one of these sessions, I almost got a standing ovation. I actually got personal phone calls and personal emails saying, probably the best training we've ever had. You're passionate. You know your subject area. Brilliant. Didn't sell a SIM card in South Australia for 30 days after that, Tim. And I thought, what the hell? These guys loved the training. And what was happening is the managers weren't going back to the stores and being able to relay the information, or they were just getting caught up in the day-to-day gut running of the business. So then that was a really good stark lesson, and one we never forgot. Now, you've got to break things down. I think Tony Abbott's been copping quite a bit of stick about 3-word slogans, but it's actually a really very, very important business skill to have, because
absolutely
take the clear message away, because people's lives are full of information. We're overloaded. And what are we really trying to achieve here? So we broke our sales tip down into, I just got a mental blank. Thanks. I was thinking about Tony Abbott. Give out a brochure with every travel product sold. Have a travel day once a month, and ring us on our priority support line whenever you need us. And do you know what? Our sales went through the roof. Isn't that incredible?
Wow. Yes, it is, but no, it isn't, because you've just simplified everything and cut to the chase. And Michael Crawford, who I interviewed a few weeks ago, he started and ran the Henry Jones Hotel down in Hobart, and he shared a line with his staff every week at the staff meeting, which was, guys, just a reminder, we offer black tie service with a blue jean attitude. And nice. It was the brand, it was like, that's what we do. Don't forget it. Don't complicate it. That's us. And you're doing the same thing. Jamien, mate, talk to me. We've got to wrap it up, but I just want to talk a little bit more about the marketing. You do some great marketing. You've nailed expos. You do lots of them. I think the one thing that I haven't talked about on this show for a long time, if ever, is partnerships. And you've got some incredible partnerships. Australia Post, All Phones, Dick Smith, NRMA, RACV, etc., etc. These are big brands in Australia, guys. And clearly what a partnership strategy does is give you extraordinary leverage. All of a sudden, your brand is is national. Wow, it's an episode in itself. What's the trick to establishing a good partnership?
Yeah, and sorry, correct again. RACV is not on our list, although I'd like.
Sorry, mate. Look, I'll do my homework next time.
If anybody's listening, then from RACV, come on board. Happy to have you on board. Everyone else, all the other motoring groups are on. The number one thing here is to be true to your partners. They are your customers, so be true to your partners. Now, some fundamentals we did. In telco, a lot of the big telcos who had these partners out there were offering sharper deals if the customer come direct than going back to their partner. So let's think about this for a second. This retail store owner, this franchisee, if you like, would go and invest in a store, train their staff up, take all the risk. They'd buy some product in, they'd do the training. A customer comes through the door, they'd work hard and make the sale. And rather than giving all the credit for then on forever to that retail partner, the telco would come along and say, oh, by the way, when you re-sign next year, we'll give you a sharper deal than the store can. I just think that's disgusting. I knew that inherently from the telco business, and I just think that I just thought it was just absolutely disgusting. So, we are true to our partners. It still is to this day more expensive to buy a Travelsim online than what it is to go to one of our stores. So we have an amazing model for the modern internet society, Tim. It's called offline, online, offline. You might find out about us in store by getting a brochure when you visit your Australia Post or your Dick Smiths or your All Phones or your membership group. You get a brochure or you find out about it from an email. You go online on the Travelsim website and you research about it. You might ring the call centre and we will push you back to that store to make the sale. We will look after our retail partner, knowing full well that we make a lot less money out of that sale because we're paying commission and margin and whatnot. So this is the number. Now, if you have these fundamental philosophies in your business models drive behaviour. Our business model is look after our business partners because they're taking the risk. They're out there buying stock in. They're supporting us. So that's the number one thing that we do differently, I believe, than a lot of competitors out there. We look after ourselves.
You've taken the long-term view.
Well, that's right.
The short-term view says, hang on, we make it's a much better dollar if we sell it on our website. The long-term view is look at the power that these partnerships bring our brand. You had to get your first partnership, and there'd be a whole lot of listeners out here thinking, well, I'd love a relationship with a national brand, whether it be in Australia or America or Canada or wherever anyone's listening. Is there just one little kind of nugget you can give us, Jamien, about that first approach? You're laughing, mate, mate, you roll the sleeves up, knock on doors, aren't you?
Well, look, I was scratching the coins together literally to get a plane ticket down to Sydney to go and present to our biggest retail partner. Let listeners join the dots. And I'd get down there and you get there and you'd be waiting around and they'd say, oh no, we've cancelled today's meeting, too busy. And so I'd sit around dialing up, thinking, what the hell am I going to do? I've got, I'll get back. And then that happened a few times. And then it took 18 months of door knocking to get this deal across the line. And they finally rung me up and said, we're going to present this to the board. We think they're interested. I don't think it's going to work for you though. This is the buyer. I don't think it's going to work though. give me a one-page proposal, a PowerPoint proposal. So we gave them the one-page PowerPoint proposal, and you sort of stuck there. Do you try and fit 1 million words on this one page, or just the three, and hope like that? So, and the other funny thing is, Tim, we got this deal across the line. I got a phone call after the meeting saying, "Oh, I can't really believe this. They've accepted your deal. We want you in our store." Oh, wow, that's good news. And I won't take the missus out for dinner just yet. We get our first order. And I've still got the invoice laminated on my wall at home. It was $76,000, and I thought, we've made it, love. Come on down to the restaurant and order whatever you want, darling. We're having entrees tonight.
Go the surf and turf.
Might have been the surf and turf. And they didn't sell a SIM card for 6 months because that's pre-season. That's before you've even run onto the field.
So are they tapping you on the shoulder going, Jamie, that $76,000 order, it's not moving?
You bet your bottom dollar they were, Tim. So then we had to get out and do the hard yards. So look, no, if you've got a good product and you believe in it, then by all means tap on these doors. But just keep in mind that brands like Australia Post, brands like the Allphones and the Dick Smith Electronics, they get knocked on the door every single day, hundreds if not thousands of times a year. And they see a lot of crap, and their first instinct is to think, here's some more crap. So don't, I wouldn't base your future on it. If you can convince end user customers, to use your product in your own right, that's the best thing you can do for yourself, because these retail guys, they seem to think, well, hang on a second, we've invested our millions and billions, we've built our wonderful brand, we work hard and it costs a lot of money, and we get up and live and breathe our brand, and all you want to do, little supplier, is come along and ride our coattails. You want to sell your soft teddy bear at 50% margin, just because we've set up all these stores. Don't have that attitude. They're not your goal to a ticket of freedom in the Porsche. Make sure your product works. Get that right. Believe in it. Be passionate about it. Understand your market and how these guys are going to sell it and why it fits with them, and then knock on the door. We many years ago, someone come to me and said, Flight Centres wants to chat to you, and they said, you've got one chance. You've got 5 minutes with a big guy, and you've got one chance. And I said, we're not ready, and knocked it back. And I've never actually got that chance again. Now, do I regret that? Do I regret not going and talking to the big boss of Flight Centre? To a certain degree, because I've heard he's a real hard marker. I wouldn't mind sitting in front of him, because he's an amazing person.
Screw Turner, his name is.
Yeah, Screw Turner. However, had we have gone in there underdone, that sort of organisation.
Yeah, that's right. You've done yourself a disfavour either way, haven't you? You've gone, well, I've missed an opportunity. Gee, I wouldn't mind that again. But gee, if I'd gone and actually done it, I would potentially look like a fool and damage the brand in front of him anyway. And so, yeah, that's a hard one, isn't it? But good on you, mate. You're full of business courage, Jamie. That's what I love about you, mate. And you're straight to the point. You're on message. You know what you're trying to do. And I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. If I knew that listeners would tolerate a 2-hour episode, I'd keep going. But I'd love to have you back one day and continue the discussion.
Look, I'd love to come back on. I love what you're doing, Tim, with your information. It's brilliant. Entrepreneurs and business owners like me need services like yours. So good work on what you're doing. And it's good to be able to share some stories. I hope some of your listeners get even a little bit out of that, because let's help each other out here and share the knowledge around and share our mistakes and what we've learnt. I know you wanted to talk about expos and a bit more about partnerships, so maybe sometime in the future I can make some time and come back on and chat to you about expos.
Yeah, mate, I'd love you to. Look, I had partnerships, I had expos, I had website, you've got explainer videos happening. There is a number of questions still to be asked, but that's okay. I might even get you to come into the Small Business Big Marketing Forum at some stage, mate, and share the love. But Jamien Zimmerman, Travelsim CEO, mate, I love your work. Thanks for sharing and being part of Small Business Big Marketing.
Thanks very much for having me on. Good luck to everybody.
Absolutely loved that interview. So many learnings from it. I hope you felt the same way. For me, here's my top 3. Number 1, the power of partnerships. Ask yourself the question, who can you do a joint venture with? Who could you develop a partnership that is going to give you leverage that you couldn't get if it was just you batting by yourself? Number 2, the power of talking to your customers. The fact that Jamien he took 5,000 calls from his bedroom in those early days. There's nothing more powerful than taking the time out to connect with your customers at a level of just how's things going? What could we be doing better? And, it was just like even having the meetup yesterday with my listeners and just getting a sense of what they love about the show, what I could be doing better is a very, very powerful thing. So the power of talking to your customers was number 2. Number 3, learning from that chat. I just love the fact that he chose an office close to a university in order to attract quality staff. So I think that's really smart. And it kind of, there's a bigger thing there. It's kind of the question of, what lateral solutions can you look for in everyday problems that you experience in your business? And to think laterally, you could easily just go, well, I just need an office that's the right size and that has cheap rent. But Jamien's seen it as an employment strategy. I think that's really clever. So I love lateral solutions. If you want to go to the show notes for this episode of 152, it's episode 152 of Small Business Big Marketing, I'll put a link into a past interview I did with Phil McKenney. Phil McKenney developed a process called Killer Innovations, and it helps you come up with lateral solutions to everyday problems. It was a wonderful interview, and Phil's one of my kind of heroes in the area of innovation and creative thinking, and had the opportunity to talk with him about 18 months ago. So I'll put a link in the show notes to that. That is about it. Got lots of great interviews coming up over the coming weeks, so stay tuned, look out for them. Head over to Facebook and join me there. You can see what's going on in the world of small business big marketing. It's at facebook.com/small business big marketing. Join the forum. You got to join the forum. If you've got a marketing question, get into that forum. The Small Business Big Marketing Forum is populated with small business owners like you, and it doesn't take a lot of, it's very quick to join, very cheap to join, and it doesn't take a lot of time. If you were allocating 15 to 30 minutes a week to just get into the forum, ask a marketing question, you are going to see improvement in the way you go about your marketing your business. I have no doubt. So head over to smallbusinessbigmarketing.com, click on the forum button, and I'll see you inside there. That is it from me. I hope you got lots out of that episode. I certainly did. Until next week, may your marketing be the best marketing. See ya.
You've been listening to the Small Business Big Marketing Show with Tim Reid. Want more marketing goodness? Then visit smallbusinessbigmarketing.com.